yourself. Just a couple things before we get started today. I guess first, there was a question initially when we were on, and Dan, can you unmute yourself and say what the question was and what the answer is that you found out?
Yeah, sure. Called the USGA to talk about, there was a question in regards to putting when two balls are on the green and player A puts the ball and hits player B's ball in stroke play, it's a two-stroke penalty. And the ball that was hit is replaced. But then there was some confusion over what happens in match play. And someone made the comment, well, it's a loss of hole, which it is not. In match play, two balls in the match, two balls on the green, A putts, hits B's ball. B's ball is replaced, and there's no penalty. Now, it doesn't say that in the rule, because the rule is very clear and it states that balls on the green, when they are hit, there's a two-stroke penalty or the general penalty only in stroke play. So I have verified that with the USGA, and they concur that there is no penalty in match play, and the ball that was hit is replaced. And I hope that clears it up for everyone, because there were a lot of people that really didn't understand that, the answer to that question, but it's just no penalty and you replace the ball.
Hey, Dan, I have a question. Now, the ball that is padded, that hits the other ball, does it then get played as it lies, or do you have to re-putt?
Kyle, can you help me? I didn't hear the question.
Okay, so, okay. Kyle, did you understand what I was asking?
Yeah. Robert was saying that if a ball, the ball that was putted hits the other ball that was at rest, the other ball that's at rest goes back to where it was. But what happens to the ball that was put? Do you play it as it lies?
Yes, you play it as
the answer is yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Silly question, but if it goes in the hole, it goes in the hole.
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then
Dan, the way the ruling is worded is that in 11(1)(a), there's no penalty to any player if a ball hits the player, the opponent, or any other of the caddies or their equipment, or any outside influence, and a ball is an outside influence. Now, and then there's an exception to that. So there's no penalty any time, and the exception is when a ball is putted from the putting green and hits a ball that's already at rest on the putting green. Okay, so the ball that gets hit has to be at rest on the putting green, and that's the two-stroke penalty. But otherwise, so in other words, match play is not part of the exception. So match play, there's no penalty.
Thank you, Craig.
what wasn't there also a discussion earlier? I thought there was a discussion about the kicking the ball in the penalty area in the mud, or was that a joke? I didn't understand.
No, Mike Church had asked the question, a ball in search, and a person accidentally kicks that ball in search, kicks it a club length, the ball rolled into a muddy area in the penalty area, ball still in search. The question was, is that ball wants to be replaced, can it be cleaned? And the question is, as long as you had already identified that ball as the player's ball, then you can clean that ball before you put it back on the spot where it was kicked from.
Okay. To the extent that it was, I mean, you probably couldn't clean it more than it was before when it was there, I would imagine, right?
Well, you could play your ball because the ball was identified right? You could identify that ball as the player's ball, right? So it wasn't a situation of trying to identify it. The ball was identified. All right. So now you're going to pick that ball up to replace it on the spot where it was kicked from. The question was, could you clean that ball? And the answer is yes, you can clean that ball because it wasn't an identification. Craig and I got into that conversation because I was kind of thinking, well, you know, maybe they're identifying the ball and you can only clean it enough to identify the ball. When the USGA looked at the question of the rule, they said that that ball had been identified so that you could clean it and replace it. And that was under 14.1C. There's 4 times, obviously, that we can't clean the ball. Other than that, you can clean the ball.
So basically, we're saying anytime a ball is moved during a search, whether it's muddy or not, the player can pick it up and clean it to it, you know, doesn't have to, we're not trying to restore it to what it looked like before. But it's not one of the conditions where the ball cannot be cleaned. So it can be cleaned during, if a ball is moved during search, picked up, it can be cleaned.
If they pick it up to identify it, they cannot clean it. That's one of the exceptions.
That's one of the exceptions, correct?
Right.
If the ball is moved, it has to be replaced. That means it's in hand and you can clean it.
Okay. All right, Lee Jewett, I think you had something you wanted to talk about from last week as well, right?
Yes, Kyle, thanks. We're getting a little bit into the weeds here, literally and figuratively. Gary Peterson raised a couple of questions, or a question last week. I hope he's on this morning.
I am, and I'm nervous. I'm
No,
nervous
no.
that you're quoting me, Lee.
No. Well, first of all, appreciate all the new volunteers for getting involved with us. And Gary, specifically for identifying yourself as a new volunteer and asking some questions. That's great. That's the way you learn. Your specific question that I was focused on, or want to focus on, is your comment about warning players versus rulings for players. So just a couple of thoughts, I guess. The first is that in our instructions to referees, specifically when you're going to referee a match, but I think it applies everywhere else too. We're supposed to say to the players that we're here to help them with the rules wherever we can. We'll do whatever we can to help avoid penalties. However, if we see a penalty, we must call it. And so I guess I just want to caution you, the spirit of what I think you were asking, Gary, before you get into a situation. And I guess let me back up a little bit. We have a wide variety of players, but all of the events that we hold are championships in one form or another. Either they're qualifiers for championships, or they're actually the Michigan Amateur Championship, or the Junior Amateur Championship, or the Women's Amateur. So these are, and we have net championships as well. So these are players that may or may not know the rules, but they're playing for something. So I think it's important that to recognize, and I suspect you do, that there's a difference between a 14 and under junior boys or girls tournament and the Michigan Amateur or the Women's Amateur Championship. So I guess I just wanted to emphasize there's a more than likely our process, as we identify at the beginning of the year, will include allow you to be a trainee and work with another rules official And then you'll be assigned a trouble hole or a starter or whatever, and there's always a rover involved. And then the next step is the official in charge, our paid staff. So I just want to, I hope, put you at ease that assuming you don't think that you need to walk out there and start making rulings on your own, really the process is for you to look for help and get some experience before you need to worry about whether you're going to warn a player or penalize the player. I guess we generally would lean towards penalizing, but recognizing that there are other situations that may not be warranted. So that's what I was wanted to emphasize. And if anyone else has any other comment, any of the other senior, I mean, we've got a lot of very experienced, knowledgeable rules of referees that you'll work with, and assuming that you rely on them, I think you'll be in good shape there.
All good. Thank you so much, Lee.
Just to add to what Lee's comments, this is Craig. Again, we are referees out there to prevent rules violations, and we need to apply those generally consistently across the field, across, among all the volunteers for any given day. But there are situations where, like Lee mentioned, certain junior tournaments, 13 and under, where there may be a situation where you feel you want to make it a learning lesson for a player, and there's no major advantage being made by what a player has just done that would be in a breach of a rule. You may feel you may want to talk to that player before you would advise that player that there's no penalty or want to not impose a penalty. You would need to get on the radio and talk to the other rules officials, your rover, even the OIC, to make sure, because who knows, maybe another referee earlier in the day had that same situation and penalized the player. So we need to be consistent in how we apply the rules to players across a tournament, whatever the tournament may be.
Yeah,
Cool,
one
thanks. Got it. Thanks, Craig.
of the bad things is to address a player and get ready to give him a penalty or tell him what the rule is. And he said, well, I did the same thing on hole 3 and the referee over there didn't say anything or just told me to be careful. So that's the concern, I think, from that standpoint.
Yep. Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. I really do appreciate it.
All right. All right. I appreciate everyone with that. I think that's important to make sure that I think the key there is that we're always checking in with the rover or the official in charge when things happen, and make sure that, it's talked about before, we talk to the player, or we quote unquote warn the player. We want to make sure that we're being consistent. We also want to make sure that at the end of the day that, the people involved in that situation know what the rule is, so that they don't make the same mistake again down the road at a different event and get penalized there. So we just want to make sure that everyone knows what the rule is when we're dealing with those situations. All right, let's get started here. So we're gonna start with bunkers today, and we'll get through bunkers and the putting green, hopefully, and then probably take a quiz. So starting with bunkers, start with our purpose statement here. Rule 12, so both Rule 12 and 13 are for specific areas of the course. Rule 12, we're talking about bunkers, which are specifically prepared areas intended to test the player's ability to play from the sand. To make sure that the player confronts this challenge, there are some restrictions on touching the sand before the stroke is made, and on where relief may be taken for a ball in a bunker. Okay, so we have in our book this nice little diagram that kind of shows, what is in the bunker and what is not in the bunker. So you can see some things. We have a ball that's laying on or in the sand is obviously in the bunker. That's this one here. we have a ball that's, on a little island piece of grass in the middle of a bunker. That's not in the bunker, as it's part of the grass in the general area here. Don't see a ton of those, but could happen. Could see this, a ball ended up on a rake, but in the bunker. That one is in the bunker. In terms of, well, let me go through the last one, that we can talk about how we would deal with that situation. And then this one here, in the stacked earth surface or face of the bunker, that is not part of the bunker now. And to keep in mind that that is only if it's earthen faced. If this was sand all the way up and it was embedded or plugged into that wall there, if it was sand, it would be in the bunker. But because it's not sand, it's earthen wall, it's not part of the bunker in this picture. So we have this picture of the ball on the rake here. What do we do when the ball is on a rake here? We have a movable obstruction inside of a bunker. Well, in this case here, the player can take relief if they want. I mean, they could hit it if they want, but they probably don't want to do that. They could take free relief from this. And I don't know if someone wants to, maybe someone that's done this a little bit, or maybe not, someone super experienced wants to explain how they would handle this situation if they ran into it on the course.
Well, if the ball is lying on the bunker, your relief point is right below that spot. So you pretty much mark a spot underneath where the ball lies, take the rake away. And in that case, because you're in a bunker, I think the relief area is still 1 club length. And you'd get 1 club length, but you have to drop inside the bunker and in the same general area, same area of the course. Now, if the ball is lying, say the ball is resting against the rake and on touching the sand, I still advise the players to mark the ball before they move the rake. So then they know exactly where the ball needs to be replaced if the ball moves while moving the rake. But there's no relief point if the ball is on the sand touching the rake. You would just move the rake and then replace the ball in its spot, if the ball moves while moving the rake.
So is it lift in place or is it drop?
That's what I was gonna ask.
So the situation depends. So in this, let's say in the first example, we have the ball that's sitting completely on the rake, like it is in the picture. And in that case, your reference point is going to be directly below where the rake is on the sand, and you get 1 club length, but not closer to the hole, but you need to stay within the bunker, and it is going to be a drop in that case. If the ball is resting against the rake but still touching the sand, that's when Craig was saying that the player would be able to move the rake, and then if the ball moved, they would be able to place the ball back where the ball was. And in that scenario, what we recommend is that the person place a tee where the ball is and then remove the rake, so that if the ball does move, they know exactly where it was to put it back. They don't need to mark it or place a tee there to mark the spot, but it's recommended. And most times you're going to deal with a situation where the ball is touching the sand, not completely on the rake.
And Kyle, I'm sorry, quick question, but placing the tee in the sand isn't considered testing the sand then?
No, anytime you're doing something with the rules within the bunker, that's fine. You can touch the sand when you're measuring for the rules or marking for the rules. That's allowed.
Thank you.
Kyle, if you mark the ball with a tee, can you lift the ball, or you're not able to lift the ball in this case?
No, you don't. You can't. Well, I mean, you can lift the ball, but you'll get a 1-stroke penalty. So
That's my question. Yes.
Leave the ball there. The only exception is I guess let's go back through the examples. In the example in the picture here, where it's on the rake, completely on the rake, not touching the sand, you can lift the ball.
Right.
But if it's touching the sand, you need to leave the ball there, move the rake, and then if the ball moves, put it back where it was.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we are going to cover more of that in Rule 15, and when we talk about movable obstructions. We're really beyond, we're really moving into a movable obstruction area more so than bunkers.
Right.
So I have a quick question here. So if this were outside the bunker, you would just remove the object and place the ball exactly where it is on top of that object, like a chair. But because this is a bunker, is that why you get relief? I'm wondering why you couldn't just pick up the ball, remove the bunker, and replace the ball exactly at the spot where it was lying on the bunker.
Well, if you get into Rule 15.2, it tells you that anytime a ball is anywhere except on the putting green, you have a relief area if it's sitting on a movable obstruction. Just as Kyle explained earlier, the reference point is directly under the movable obstruction, but then you have a 1 club length relief area.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Robert, look at page 218 if you want to see the picture there for that.
Okay,
And we'll cover it like Craig said when we get to that rule.
thanks.
All right, so when is a ball in a bunker? It's when it touches the sand on the ground inside the edge of the bunker or is inside of the edge of the bunker and rest. So that was that picture here where we have, that's the example there. And that includes if it's in or on a loose impediment, a movable obstruction, or an abnormal course condition or integral object that touches the sand. So if the ball is in temporary water in the middle of a bunker, it's still in the bunker. If it's on a leaf, it's you know, in the bunker. The only exception to that is when we have this little island area that is not in the bunker. But like I said, we don't see a ton of those.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
On in 12.1, the ground of where the sand normally would be. I mean, this picture that we're looking at is a well-groomed bunker. Some of the bunkers that we see are not so well groomed, especially when they use a machine to. There's an exit point where the machine comes out of the bunker. What's the judgment on that?
Yeah, so let me just go to the definition here. So again, it's going to be that. So in this case here, I mean, if we do have like a runoff, is that kind of what you're saying, right? Like a runoff that's kind of frayed or whatever.
It's not a well-defined lip, if you would, of the bunker. And we see, I tend to see that quite a bit on some of these municipal courses.
Mm-hmm. So really, it's the definition talks about the edge of the prepared area. So typically there is. I mean, I know sometimes it can be a little not 100% defined, but in this case, if you had like little areas, those little areas that aren't in this edge circle thing would not be part of the bunker.
Is there any question where the edge of the bunker is? For the committee to paint a blue line would help define it.
Yep. Yeah. Good point there, Marv. All right, and then if you do have a situation where you have a ball that's both in a bunker at another area of the course, Rule 2.2C talks about what part of the course it's in. There are certain things. So if it's touching the bunker and the putting green, is it on what? Bunker in a penalty area, is it in what? So in those cases, you can see how that would come up. The most common one that you'll probably see is bunker in a penalty area. You'll see that quite a bit. And in that case, the ball is in the penalty area, I believe. Someone correct me if that's not right, but 99% sure that's correct. All right. The other thing with the bunker is, so if you go, if and I don't have it up here on the page, but if you go to the definition of the bunker, there are a couple things to bring to your attention. The that's on page 331 if you have your official guide to the rules of golf. There it talks about the committee may define a prepared area of sand as part of the general area and not a bunker. So if I believe Kiowa Island, they do that. They don't have any bunkers on the course. It's just sandy areas, general area. Some of the other courses, seaside courses will do this. Whistling Straits, had I think the other way, kind of all areas at one point were bunkers, especially when the Dustin Johnson thing happened back in 2010 or whatever that was. But there are some exceptions to how the committee can define the bunkers. And we don't deal with a ton of courses out there, but there could be a couple where if we have certain waste areas or things like that, we want to make sure we know what they're defined as, if they're bunkers or they're waste areas, because what the players can do in there will change slightly in terms of being able to ground their club or not, if it's a bunker or a waste area. So important, if you do have waste areas on the course that you're working, or things that look like waste areas, to make sure you know what they're going to be defined as. And then we also talk about here.
Well, I haven't been at Hawk Hollow.
Yep.
I haven't been in Hawk Hollow in a while, but don't they have some waste areas too there? That for our Michigan Am this year that might be questionable or need to be defined or clarified?
Yeah, I've only been on the course once, and I'm trying to remember if on the 18 that we're going to use, they do. I can't remember if they do or not.
Lee,
Kyle,
Lee, that might
in
be
a
on
waste,
Eagle Eye. That might be more on
Kyle-
Eagle Eye than it is on Hawk Hollow. But I know that there's a lot of penalty areas there.
I have a question. In the waste area, which it's defined, what about, if furrows made by one of the maintenance carts, where I assume there's no relief from that. You play the ball as it lies.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, kind of similar to how you would define ground under repair. If it was, deep enough and it was abnormal, you could grant that as ground under, but it would need to be abnormal and not, but normal kind of maintenance tracks or work with maintenance vehicles, probably wouldn't fall under that category unless it was pretty deep and kind of outside of the ordinary. All right, and then the last thing in the definition of bunker that could come up when you're out there talks about when a bunker is being repaired and the committee defines the entire bunker as ground under repair. It's treated as part of the general area, not the bunker. So there are going to be times where courses will have work on bunkers going on that will have to declare bunkers out of play, or maybe because of temporary water filling up a bunker, we'll declare it ground under repair and not part of the bunker, but part of the general area. So just keep that in mind if we do have that out in the course, that it's not a bunker at that point. It's just general area in terms of the rules. All right, so playing the ball in a bunker, you can definitely play the ball out of the bunker. No problem with that, right? But there are some things we can do and things we can't do in here. So before playing a ball in a bunker, a player may remove loose impediments and movable obstructions. And this includes any reasonable touching or movement of the sand in the bunker that happens while doing so. The key caveat there is that when we are removing loose impediments, you need to be careful that we're not causing the ball to move at the same time. So if we have a leaf that's near the ball and we remove the leaf and the ball doesn't move, not a problem. But if we remove the leaf and in so doing that, we cause our ball to move, we're going to have a 1-stroke penalty in that case, and we're going to have to put the ball back where it was to just get 1-stroke penalty. So, and we can remove loose impediments now in the bunker, but they can't cause the ball to move. Some things that you can't do that will result in penalty. You can't deliberately touch the sand in a bunker with a hand, a club, a rake, or another object to test the condition of the sand to learn information for the next stroke. So unfortunately, when we record these sessions and we play videos and stuff like that, they flag them for copyright issues, because a lot of these tours and stuff have big money lawyers that prevent little guys like us from using their content. But here's an article I just put in the chat that talks about what Ted showed last week, I think. In the USAM in 2020, caddy touched the sand and ended up getting a general penalty for that, for testing the condition of the sand. That's a good article. I'd recommend that you read it through. For those of you that watched it or have seen it, heard about it, you kind of know the story, but that's an example where things you can't do where you're going to get a penalty. And then can't touch the sand in a bunker with a club in the area right in front of or right behind the ball. So again, we can't ground our club. We can't make a practice swing while our ball's in the bunker. If you don't understand that, then don't worry about it, because there's certain things that we don't want to tell players when it comes to practice shots in a bunker. But when it's in the bunker and your ball's in there, you can't take a swing or making the backstroke for a swing. So if you're taking it back and you touch the sand, touch a pebble of the sand, like what happened in the U.S. Women's Open playoff a couple years ago, or probably more than a couple years ago now, you're going to get a general penalty for that. All right. When things don't result in penalties, you can dig in with your feet to take a stance. However, you can't build a stance, which is covered under 8.1A. And then you could smooth the bunker to care for the course at any point. So if you're just doing it to care for the course, so the common example of that is my ball's in the left side of the bunker. I enter from the right and I bring the rake with me, and on my way over, I rake my footprints because I'm going to exit on the other side after I hit. As long as I'm doing that to just care for the course, not a problem. And there's no penalty there. I can put my clubs down, equipment or other objects in the bunker. So if you had, I always use this at the rules seminars I do for, if you have a push cart, you can just take that sucker right up into the bunker and leave it in there if you want, not a penalty. No problem with that. Probably wouldn't recommend doing that because people will probably tell you get a penalty, but it's not. We had the question earlier about measuring, marking, or lifting. If you do that and touch the sand, not a problem. You could lean on a club to rest or to stay balanced or prevent a fall. So if you have bad balance and you're clumsy like me and you go into the bunker, if you've touched the sand there, you're okay. Another thing we don't like to tell people is if you strike the sand in frustration or anger, not a problem. But again, bad etiquette, so we don't encourage it. But if that does happen, not a penalty. However, the player does get the general penalty if his or her actions in touching the sand improve the conditions affecting the stroke in breach of 8.1A. So again, if that's kind of an example of if you're building your stance and you do things and you take a stance and you build it really deep in there, that's when you're affecting your conditions affecting the stroke, and you're going to get a general penalty in that scenario. All right, Gary brought up that you can test the sand in a bunker other than the one you're in, right? And Craig confirmed that that's correct. A player can also take a practice swing in another bunker than where the ball lies. Again, these are things that we don't tell people. And the other thing too is that that all those things are true, with the exception of that they can't, unreasonably delay play. So if that's causing them to be over their 40 seconds to hit a shot, then we can, work with them and penalize them in that regards. So definitely not encouraged, not against the rules, not something that you want to tell the players. If they're smart enough, they want to learn it on their own, that's fine. But when they're in the bunker, which is the bunker that the ball is in, they can't do those things.
Kyle, there always seems to be a question on the rules test of your ball comes to rest in a bunker on a candy wrapper or a banana peel.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, this is Jeff. In match play, because this is general penalty, if the person hit the sand swinging back, he'd lose the hole.
Correct. Yep. On their backswing, if they hit the sand or touch a sand, that would be a loss of hole penalty in match play.
Thank you.
Yep.
So Kyle, if you hit a practice stroke in another bunker, something besides the one that you are in, why isn't that considered practice?
Why is the earth round, Robert? There's questions, there's things I don't know the answers to, but no, it is a good question. I'm not unsure of the answer, to be honest with you, and anything that I would say would just be guessing. So I don't know if there's anyone else that knows that or has had that question asked at a rules seminar that could chime in.
Well, I don't know the answer, but generally speaking, wouldn't practice be actually hitting a ball?
So if there's no ball involved, then it's not practice.
Yeah, I mean, you can take a swing in the rough, practice swing in the rough. You can, in the general area, you can take a practice putting stroke on the putting green without a ball. All those things, if you don't have a ball involved, I would think are not considered practice.
Are not considered practice. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, but then again, that's sorry, go ahead. Yep.
If you go back to the purpose station, the purpose of the rule, and you read that, it's because the bunker is a specially prepared area and it's to test your ability. The whole game is kind of that way, but in the bunker, you can take a practice swing as long as you don't touch the sand, right? So, but you can't go in and touch the sand, either going back or in taking a practice swing in the bunker. But if you do, now you're testing the soil, and it's a different area of the course. And based on the course that I was just in, that's what they kind of used, because it is a special area of the course.
Yep, great point there. So, however, some of these restrictions that we talked about don't apply after the ball is played out of the bunker. So if you hit the ball outside the bunker, you can touch the sand without penalty. You can smooth the sand to care for the course. And that's true even if the ball comes to rest outside the bunker and you're required to come back under stroke and distance, or you choose to take a relief option where you would go back to the bunker to play. You could also, if the sand in the bunker is on the player's line of play for the next stroke, outside the bunker, that's still okay. So after the ball exits the bunker, you can do whatever you need to do there. Again, provided that it's not coming down the hill and rolling back at you and it's going to be in the bunker. That's a different scenario there. But if it's at rest outside the bunker, whether it's out of bounds or not, there are there are no restrictions there on what you can do.
Yeah, Kyle, they are looking into that a little bit further for the next revision. One of the hot topics for the next set of rules that come out.
Interesting. All right. Can't wait for that for next year.
Yeah, right, because you could hit one out, right? The ball goes out, you can start raking, but it could spin back into the bunker.
Yeah.
Right, so there's some, they've created or have evaluated some dark area or gray area, if you will.
Sure. All right. But then it says that their exception here is that the ball played from the bunker comes back into the bunker, or the player drops the ball in the bunker, they no longer can do those things. So if my ball does come back in the bunker, at that point in time, I can't rake around where I was, or if I'm going to drop the ball after I drop it, I can't rake and anything like that. All right, there are a couple specific examples or specific rules for when a ball is in the bunker. We won't get into a ton of these today, but just to reference them is that if you are inside the bunker and you have interference from an abnormal course condition, so temporary water, ground under repair, that would be covered under Rule 16.1C, where you'll see that there'll be some relief options there, some for free and some with penalty stroke. And then same thing with a dangerous animal condition. If you have fire ants or something like that inside of a bunker, or snake or something like that, that would be another scenario where you're going to have some options that are a little different here. And then unplayable ball, we'll talk about that in Rule 19.3, where they have some options, one under 1 stroke and one under a 2-stroke penalty there, and how you deal with that when you're in the bunker, and which ones are 1 stroke and which ones are 2 strokes. Which ones are 1 stroke and which one is 2 strokes, actually. So, all right. Any questions about bunkers before we move on to the putting greens?
Kyle, are we going to go over the, you probably do this with the embedded ball rule, but talking about the ball embedded in the face of the bunker? I know this is kind of always a little bit confusing, but are we going to cover that now or should we wait?
We could probably, let's wait to cover it later, just because then we can talk about, then we're not going through what the relief procedure is. And we'll just make sure to bring that up when we get to the embedded ball rule. And we can talk about this example right here where the ball's in the lip, and in certain circumstances, that clarification that talks about when you may not be able to get relief or take an unplayable in that scenario. I think that's what you're getting at, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have this question too. It's the same if it's advanced somewhere else. If 2 balls laying side by side in the bunker.
Yeah. We can talk about that one now, because I think we might have passed that rule, or maybe not. I think we might have passed that rule already, but in that case there, you know, if you have 2 balls that are near each other in the bunker, you're going to be able to, you know, if you need to, you can mark a ball in the bunker. Just make sure that you don't clean it to get away, so that the ball's not interfering with another player's play. Usually in these scenarios, anytime when you deal with it, whether it's in the bunker or outside, the preferred method is to allow the player that wouldn't have any interference to hopefully play first. If the balls are touching each other, and that's a little different scenario. But in some cases, you know, player that might be farther away or closer to the hole could play first and not have interference, and so they could play, and the other player plays after that. But if it is going to be interfering with the play, they can mark it, they can pick it up, and then after the players played from the sand, in this case, they're able to get the lie that they had before, and then they'd be able to put the ball back, place it back, and then play.
And that would include, if needed, then to take a rake and create the line, which I should have, right?
Yep, you're entitled to the lie you had before the other player played. So yeah, you could rake it and get the lie as close as possible to what it was before.
So question on order of play. You said that you're allowed to let them play, like not the person that's most further away. But what if that person wants to? Are they, to the set take precedent?
Yeah. If the person that's farther away wants to play first, then the other person would mark their ball and let that player play first. And honestly, in match play, if you were the referee for a match like that, that probably would be the preferred method, unless the players would be, both agree to play out of turn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to the putting greens here. It's going from one area of the course to another area of the course that I hate. I just take strokes from my game. So, all right, putting greens. So rule 13, again, we're talking about another specific area of the course, is a specific rule for putting greens. Putting greens are specifically prepared for playing the ball along the ground, and there is a flag stick for the hole on each putting green. So certain different rules apply than for other areas of the course. And when we're talking about the putting green, I think this was said to me at one of the rule sessions I went to, the USGA and PGA did. And one of the main reasons that they made some of these changes in 2019 to the putting green is they really believe that the putting green was, what they were trying to do with the putting green is, if you had a double wave event, you wanted the players that played at 7:30 in the morning to have the same putting, as close as possible to the same putting experience as the players that played at 2:30 p.m. And so some of the things that we're now allowed to fix, some of the damage that we're allowed to fix under the rules that we weren't previously, was done to kind of fall under that principle, and that we want it to be as fair as possible and not to have an advantage when I'm playing at one part of the day versus the other. All right, so actions allowed or required on putting greens. This rule allows the player to do things on the putting greens that are normally not allowed off the putting green, such as being allowed to mark, lift, clean, and replace a ball, and to repair damage and remove sand and loose soil on the putting green. There is also no penalty for accidentally causing a ball or a ball marker to move on the putting green. Again, important part of the course. Specific things that we're going to be able to do here that we're not able to do in the general area or many other parts of the golf course. All right, so the ball is on the green when any part of it's touching the green. If it lies on anything such as a loose impediment or an obstruction that is inside the edge of the putting green. We do have some scenarios where, especially early on in the season, because of spring and bad grass growth, we have some areas that might be difficult to determine, if it's on the putting green or not. In that case, if we do have a really hard time, we or the course may have dots they put to define the edge of the putting green. We try to avoid doing that whenever possible. However, sometimes for mowing purposes, the courses like to have these. So you might find yourself in a situation where you do have those white or blue dots that are on the course that do define the edge of the putting green. So that could be something that you see out there this spring. All right, the ball on the putting green can be lifted and cleaned without restriction. The spot of the ball must be marked before it's lifted, and the ball must be replaced on its original spot. Okay, so we talked about when we're talking about these things, removing sand and loose soil and damage, the key component here is we're looking at the location of where the sand and loose soil and the damage is. Okay, the ball, where the ball is doesn't matter. It's where the sand and the loose soil and where the damage is. So if the damage is on the putting green or the sand and the loose soil is on the putting green, we can remove the sand or loose soil, and we can fix the damage, even if our ball is off the putting green or on the fringe. But on the flip side, if that's on the fringe, that damage and the loose soil and sand is on the fringe, we can't remove that, even if our ball was on the green. So just keep that in mind, and you'll definitely get some questions about that out there. It seems like every year it happens that you know, if player hits the green with their ball mark, they spin it off the green, and then they ask if they can fix the ball mark on the green. Not a problem. The ball mark's on the green. You can fix it. If the ball mark was off the green, you're not going to be able to fix that. If especially, there are certain cases where you can fix it, but if it's in your line of play or it's going to be affecting your shot, you're not going to be able to fix that without penalty. Okay. And then when we're talking about damage, there are some kind of things that are considered damage and things that aren't. Okay, so we're able to take reasonable actions to restore the putting green to its original condition. However, we can't do things like create like a pathway or like a ramp or whatever. Like we can't take our putter and just keep tapping it down all the way to the hole to create like a little groove. But if we're tapping down ball marks or spike marks, things like that, that's not a problem. So things we can fix: damage caused by a person or an outside influence, ball marks, shoe damage, scrapes, indentation. Someone gets pissed off and pulls a Sergio Garcia and slams their putter into the green. That can be fixed. If we have an old hole plug that we've always been able to fix, indentations from maintenance tools, vehicles, animal tracks, embedded objects. So we have a stone or an acorn that's embedded. We can pry that out and fix that. Not a problem there. But damage on the green does not include normal maintenance practices, such as like aeration holes. We won't be able to fix those. Or if it was verticut, the grooves from the verticut, any kind of normal bad grass growth. If it was just bad grass growth on the edges of the green, those would not be something that we could fix. However, the committee could define those as ground under repair if they would like, but that's not something that can be fixed. Natural wear of the hole. So in most events that we'll work at, the holes will be cut every day, so we won't need to worry about this. But you could find yourself in a situation where, you know, the course at a certain time of the year is only cutting cups once or twice a week. Any kind of natural wear to the hole would not be allowed to be fixed. But if I, you know, nick the edge of the hole with the flag stick or my putter, I can fix that, not a problem. All right. Any questions about damage and what damage can we fix on the putting green and what we can't?
Kyle, if you had an old ball hole, an old hole on the green that was in your line and it's sticking up quite a bit, and for some reason you couldn't press it down or whatever, would you be able to take relief from that?
So possibly, if the committee declared that as an abnormal course condition, you could get relief from that. You know, 9 times out of 10, you're probably not going to be able to do that. But if it was really poorly put back in, or was not able to get, you know, reasonably flat, then you could ask the committee to make an exception for that. Or that would be something that, like at our events, we would have a rover come take a look at, and probably the official in charge as well. And probably by the time that happened, the player would just choose to play around it, or you know, do something else. So, but yeah, not 100%, but you know, you could potentially rule that as an abnormal course condition, ground under repair.
Thank you.
Yep.
Kyle, there is a clarification that damage to the putting green includes hail damage.
Yes, I had that. You're right. I had that pulled up. So when you're working the GAM Junior kickoff and we just got done with the hailstorm that rolls through, you'll be able to fix that. So I'm just joking on the first event of the year. We hopefully won't have hail, but we do have hail in Michigan, so that's definitely an important clarification to bring up, Dan. All right, there are two specific rules for a ball or a ball marker that moves on the putting green. If we accidentally cause the ball to move on the putting green, not a penalty. This is a great example of a rule that specifically applies to the putting green and not other parts of the course. So if we accidentally cause our ball to move in the fairway or on the fringe, we're going to have a penalty. But on the green, if it's accidental, not a problem. Put it back where it was. We don't know the exact spot. We're going to estimate it and place it there. Okay, and then if it was a ball marker, again, you might, player might tap the ball marker down, and then in the process of doing that, they pick up their putter and the ball marker stuck to the bottom of the putter. As long as it was accidental, not a problem. Just put the ball marker back where it was, and if you don't know the exact spot, estimate it and place it there.
Kyle, I don't know how many people know what happened to Keegan Bradley at the Players. Yeah, I don't know if you want to review that.
I don't remember what happened. What happened there, Dick?
He marked his ball but didn't pick it up, and then the wind blew the ball, and he picked up his ball and put it back where the mark was.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We will get to that in a sec. I didn't know that happened this weekend. That's great.
Yeah, they gave him a tui and he was pissed.
You should have known the rules.
Yeah, he was. All he had to do was lift it, and he would have been fine.
Well, he blew the tournament on that, and then he put his ball in the water on 18.
Yeah.
Well, the other players did not know the rule either. He didn't know it, and neither did the other two in his group.
Mm-hmm.
It seems if you do that for a job and you make that much money, you ought to know the rules of the game.
Yeah, or pay the caddy to know it.
Yeah, really.
So, yeah, that's I did not see that. Was that on Sunday that it happened, or I guess Monday, or?
I think it was Saturday, because when the wind was really blowing.
Right. Yeah. Saturday it was kicking. Yeah.
Yeah, so he marked it. He never picked it up.
Yep.
And then the ball moved.
Yep. All right. So before we get to that, just a couple exceptions there for this. If it's accidental, but the ball would be played as it lies if you if the ball moved during your backswing or during the stroke and the stroke is made, you're going to play the ball as it lies there. We covered that under Rule 9.1b. If the player or opponent deliberately lifts the player's ball or ball marker on the putting green, there could be a penalty in that case. May not be in other cases, but that's under Rule 9.4 and 9.5. And really that comes down to if it's a concession, obviously there's not going to be any penalties. If we're not in a concession environment, then we could have penalties in that case, and probably would have penalties. But I think Craig covered that in 9.4 and 9.5, so we won't touch base on that there. All right, so in the instance here with Keegan that happened, what happens when a ball is moved by natural forces? So I think we talked about the definition of a natural force, but that is in the definition. So if you haven't read that one over, take a look at that. Basically talks about what a natural force is, and so in this case here we have a wind that was our natural force and caused the ball to move. If the ball's on the putting green, where the player plays next depends on whether the ball had already been lifted and replaced on its spot. If the ball had been lifted and replaced, the ball must be replaced on its original spot and then played as it lies. However, is like in Keegan's example, the ball was marked, but it wasn't lifted. And in that case, he needs to play it from its new spot. And it sounds like, did it blow back into the water, or did he just didn't play from the right spot? So we got the 2-stroke penalty. Is that what happened?
Yeah, he just
Yeah.
didn't play it from the right spot. He replaced it where it was and he shouldn't have.
Right. So not a serious breach, just 2-stroke penalty for playing from the wrong place. Okay. Yeah, so this rule was new in 2019, and basically it got put into play because of a situation that happened at the Masters in 2015, I think, to Billy Horschel. I believe it happened on the 15th hole. There, he had a ball, he hit the ball on the front. I think it was the front of the green. Hit the green in 2 at a par 5, and marked the ball, and it was windy out, and marked the ball, and then picked it up, cleaned it, and then put the ball back, and then walked around to the other side of the hole. So because he was so far away, he couldn't see his mark, so that's why he put the ball back. And when he did that, the wind gusted and his ball rolled back into the water hazard at that point. Water hazard yellow. And at that point, he had to go back on the other side, hit a chip shot. And I think he actually got up and down for bogey. But under the new rules, or under the rules now, since he marked it and lifted it and then placed it back, he would be able to pick up the ball and put it back where it was, or put a ball back where it was, and play without penalty. But as what happened with Keegan, if he didn't mark it and lift it, then you're going to play the ball from where it comes to rest, if natural forces cause it to move. All right. No deliberate testing of greens. So during a round or while play is stopped, player must not rub the surface of the green or roll a ball on the green to deliberately test the surface. However, if they, between the play of 2 holes, that can be allowed as long as there's not a local rule against that for practicing during or between holes. All right, so what happens if we hit the ball on a wrong green? So the first thing we want to figure out is, well, what is a wrong green? So chances are when we have a term like that, it's probably in our definitions. So if we go to our definitions, we can see what the definition of a wrong green is. And wrong green is any green on the course other than the putting green for the hole that the player is playing. And it talks about some examples of things that are wrong greens. The putting greens for all other holes that the player is not on. The normal putting green for a hole where a temporary green is being used. Practice greens for putting, chipping, and pitching unless the committee excludes them by local rule. And these areas, or these wrong greens, are part of the general area. But the player must take relief from these. So the key word here under this too is must. So they need to take relief. If they don't, they're going to get a penalty. So in this case here, you have interference. The best way to kind of look at it is this picture is we have interference if the ball is touching, but also our stance as well. So we have stance, ball, and swing as well. I forgot about swing. So if our area of intended stance, swing, or the ball is touching the wrong green, we're going to get relief, or we're going to take relief. And again, to do that, we're going to do just like we would for a cart path, which we'll get into next week, I believe, in terms of how we take relief from that scenario. So we take our nearest point of complete relief, and then we get one club length from that point, which is shown by this relief area here. All right.
Okay, I'll just add some, Kyle.
Yeah.
So for the qualifiers or championships we run, we identify there's a large green, like a shared green, where we'll put blue stakes on that identify a wrong green. So in some cases, at some of places like Twin Lakes or other places, we'll identify blue stakes. So even though a ball might be on a massive green, it's still deemed to be a wrong green where they'd have to take relief.
Yeah, good point there, Alex. We'll definitely run into those. Twin Lakes, U of M, the Moors. We use blue stakes on all of those courses, and I think that is kind of how that's done is covered in the definition a little bit, I believe, of putting green. Pull that up here really quick. Yeah, so it talks about if you have a double green or a green that's kind of in separate stages, you can break it up, and the committee can define it as multiple greens. So where you have one is the putting green, the one is the wrong green. But you can also have a scenario where the entire area is treated as the putting green for that hole. So that's kind of like a St. Andrews type setup where you might say that that entire double green is part of the green, and the players would be allowed to play from those areas. And when we do that, the players have the option to play the shot however they want. So if they want to chip, they can. Definitely, we don't want to encourage that. But if it's a better player or a higher skilled player that's playing the shot, they're probably, chances are they're going to be able to pick it pretty clean. So if we don't identify a double green like that as a wrong green, then the player can play from that and play the shot, whether it's putter or a wedge. They have the option to do what they want there. All right. So what happens if I am on the wrong green and I just go ahead and I hit my shot, and I don't take relief, or I'm standing on the green and I hit my shot? They're just going to get a 2-stroke penalty there. They don't need to fix that. They're just going to get the general penalty, and they just keep playing in that case. And then this last thing talks about a couple of things. There's no relief when it's clearly unreasonable. So if a player is taking an unreasonable stance or direction of play solely to get relief, they would not get relief from that. And we'll talk about that when we get to cart pass and ground under repair and things like that. Same kind of principle applies there. And then the committee can also make a local or adopt a local rule to deny relief from wrong green that only interferes with the stance. We don't do that. So it'd be stance, swing, or live ball for us. All right.
Kyle,
Yeah.
on a double green where the entire green is in play, the other flag stick is a hole made by the greenskeeper and is treated as abnormal course condition.
Yes, correct. Yep. Good point there, Dan. Yeah. So if I hit it in the wrong hole, I can take that out without penalty. And I'll probably cry because I hit the best shot of my life, but it did win in the wrong one. So, or if that's in your way, you can get relief from that, like you would if there was a puddle of water in the way of your shot on the green. All right. 13.2, the flag stick, my favorite rule in the book. Just kidding, but all right. So This rule covers the player's choices for dealing with the flag stick. The player may leave the flag stick in the hole or have it removed, which includes someone attending the flag stick and removing it after the ball is played. But the player must decide before making a stroke. There is no penalty. Normally, there's no penalty if the ball in motion hits the flag stick, and this rule applies to a ball played from anywhere on the course, whether on or off the green. So the player needs to decide if they're going to leave the flag stick in, they're going to take the flag stick out, or they're going to have it attended. One of those things needs to be decided before the player hits the shot. They can't kind of do it midstream and say, well, now I want someone to attend the flag stick. It's decided before the shot's hit, and they have that option for every shot. So in some cases, the player may want to leave the flag in, maybe on a long putt, and then take it out on a short one. That's perfectly fine. The other thing that said in there was it applies also to shots off the green. So if you want to be like Phil Mickelson and have your caddy tend the flag from 50 yards on a pitch shot, you could do that, provided that it's not slowing down play. But normally we see this when the ball is on the putting green. All right, so the player, if they decide to leave the flag stick in the hole, they can leave it in the hole where it was when the group got to the hole. So that could be in a not straight position. The group behind or in front of you may have left it in crooked, but if that's to your advantage, you can leave it that way. You could actually, and then the other option is you could have it put in the centered in the hole if you're going to leave it in there. And the other thing about that is that anyone in the group is entitled to the position of the flag stick when you got to the green. So if it was tilted one way or the other, even if Alex wanted to have it centered in there, I could restore it to where it was when we got to the green if I wanted to in that case. In either case, the player must not try to gain an advantage by deliberately moving the flag stick to a position other than centered, except that if it was in the position when they got to the green. So I can't say I want it tilted one way or the other unless it was tilted that way when we got to the green. All right, if we leave the flag stick in the hole and it hits, if it hits the flag stick, there's no penalty, and we just continue to play on. We're going to play it as it lies. If a ball is in motion, then we have a limitation on removing the flag stick. So the player and his or her caddy must not deliberately move or remove the flag stick to affect where the ball in motion might come to rest. So if that happens, the player is going to get the general penalty. So again, we can't if we're gonna leave the flag stick in, or we're gonna have it attended. We can't tell the person attending the flag stick, hey, if the ball is coming in hot there, leave it in the leave the flag in the hole, don't take it out. If they're attending the flag stick, they need to remove the flag after the shot is hit or the ball is struck. However, there's no penalty if the player has the flag stick in the hole moved or removed for any other reason, such as when he or she reasonably believes that the ball in motion will not hit the flag stick before coming to a rest. So if I have a 30-foot putt and I hit it woefully short and that it's not going to get there, even if I wanted the flag stick in, someone could take the flag stick out while my ball is in motion, just because there's no chance that the ball is going to get there. Or there was no reasonable chance that my ball was going to get there based on how I hit the putt. And number 4 here, talk about we talk about when other players move or remove the flag stick. So that there is going to be a penalty for the other player, their caddy. if they do so before or during the stroke and the player makes a stroke without being aware of this. So there's an example of this that happened a while back now, but Boo Weekly was playing and he I forget who he's playing with, but someone hit their putt, and this was before it was not a penalty to have the ball hit the flag stick, but he was just trying to help the player, and he went out and he was like, oh, like if the ball hits the flag stick, the player's going to get a penalty. So he went and he was trying to do the nice thing, and he pulled out the flag stick, but in the process of doing that, he cost himself a penalty. And that's still the case today. If a player or a caddy did remove the flag stick when the player didn't ask for it. But again, in this case here, there's no penalty if they reasonably believe the player's ball would not hit the flag stick if it wasn't come up woefully short or something like that. And if they were not aware that the player was about to play, so maybe the player was putting but they didn't see it and they just went up and grabbed it to grab the flag out just to help with pace of play. If they were unaware the player was hitting, no penalty in that case. All right. Player can't have the flag stick removed from the hole. Again, that means taking it out or authorizing someone to attend the flag stick. So basically, when someone's attending the flag, they're going to be near the hole or next to the hole. And in my book here, I have that when someone is next to the hole, it means it's within an arm's length of the hole. And then the player is treated to have authorized a flag stick if the player's caddy is holding the flag stick in above or next to the hole or is standing right next to the hole when the stroke is made, even if the player is not aware the caddy is doing so. Also, if the player asks any other person to attend the flag stick and the person does so, or the player sees any other person holding the flag stick in above or next to the hole or standing right next to the hole and the player makes a stroke without asking the player to move away or leave the flag stick in the hole. So in most cases, when the flag's being attended, players know what's going on. People know what's going on. Not really a huge problem. What happens if the ball hits the flag stick or the person attending the flag stick when the player wanted the flag stick removed? In this case here, whether it was deliberate or accidental is gonna determine what the penalty is. So here, if it's accidental, I'm trying to take the flag out and it won't come out. It's stuck. We've all seen that happen or had that happen to us where we are attending and the flag just doesn't come out for whatever reason, or we pull out the liner by mistake. That's accidental. And in that case, there's no penalty and the ball is just going to be played as it lies. But if it's deliberately deflected or stopped, then the player must not play the ball as it lies and instead must take relief under Rule 11.2C. And in that case, it's going to depend on where the ball was played from. If it was on the green, then we're going to cancel the stroke and play again. If it's off the green, then we're going to determine where the ball would have come to rest. So really, in that case, I mean, an example of that one might be that the caddy purposely or someone purposely left the flag stick in the hole after they were attending it because the ball was coming really hot and they wanted it to hit the flag stick to slow it down. That would be one example there where you'd have a deliberate deflection. But it could also be the person, it could also be not just the flag stick, it could also be hitting the person. So someone's attending the flag stick and they purposely leave their foot there to stop the ball. That would be another scenario where we'd have an issue and a penalty applied. All right, and then there are, of course, as with all these rules that we deal with, there are exceptions to that. So there are some exceptions on deliberately moving the flag stick to affect the ball in motion under 11.3. And again, those are things that deal with like if a ball is or a flag stick's laying on the ground, they can move it, things like that. All right, any questions about the flag stick in terms of attending, in, out, etc.? Okay. All right, 13.2C. So when the ball is resting against the flag stick in the hole, so if any part of the ball is in the hole below the level of the surface, the ball is also resting against the flag stick, the ball is treated as hold, even if the entire ball, excuse me, is not below the surface. So I think all of us have probably seen on various sites the picture of a ball that was embedded or in the, it basically imploded in the hole. But the key thing here is that it needs to be below the level of the surface, and it also needs to be touching the flag stick for it to be hold. So we've all seen that picture where the ball is, below the level of the surface, but it's not touching the flag stick. In that case, we're not hold, and we would put the ball on the lip and then putt out from there. All right. Any questions about what happens here? The other thing too is that if it, as long as it's somewhat below the, or if it's below the surface at all and touching the flag stick, it's good. You don't need to like move the flag and have it fall down to the bottom, or if you take the flag out in that case and the ball pops out, it's still considered as hold as long as part of it's below the level of the surface and it's touching the flag stick. All right. Ball overhanging a hole. So rule 13.3, if a ball is overhanging the hole, the player is allowed a reasonable time to reach the hole and 10 or more seconds to wait to see whether the ball will fall into the hole. So there is a interpretation in the book that talks about what a reasonable time is for the player to reach the hole. And it gives an example here. It says, for example, a player may have played the shot from well off the putting green, and it may take him or her several minutes to reach the hole, while other players may play their shots and walk to the putting green. Or the player may need to take an indirect route to the hole by walking around the line of play for another player on the putting green. So it's not necessarily just a reasonable time based on the things that are going on for them to get to the hole. And then once they get there, they have 10 seconds to wait. And then if the ball falls in the hole within that 10 seconds, then the ball is considered as hold. If it doesn't fall within that 10 seconds, then the ball is considered to be at rest. If it happened to fall in the hole after the 10 seconds, then the shot needs to be put back on the lip, and the player would putt out. Let me wait. Hold on. That might not be case. That may not be the case here. The ball falls in. Yeah, no, that's is that right, Dan? I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, your slide does not have the same language as the rule.
Yeah.
10 or more seconds is not correct.
It's 10 more seconds.
10 more seconds. Sorry. Let's see.
And if the ball falls in after the hold, but there's a 1-stroke penalty.
Correct. Yeah. Sorry about
Kyle,
that.
is there any guidance? Is there any guidance on what it means to be at the hole? Let's say if you miss a 3 or 4 foot putt and it's hanging on the lip, are you already considered to be at the hole, or if you need a step or two to get there, I mean, when you consider that hole, when you can reach down in it and pick the ball out?
Yeah, so in that case, if you have a, have some background noise here. In that case here, if you have a 3-foot putt, I mean, you know, you're pretty much there. I mean, you probably are, you can take a, you know, a second to get to there, or you might have a reaction where you know, do something and then walk the second to get to the hole, but you're probably at that point, you're probably there. Your 10 seconds would start right away. So, and then just to clarify again, so if the ball falls in after the 10 seconds, then the ball is deemed as hold, but you get a 1-stroke penalty. No, that's not right. I was right before. Wait, maybe not here. Should probably just read before we.
You were right the last time, Kyle.
Yeah, right. If it falls in after I place the ball on the lip and I play it, right?
Well, if the ball falls in, if you wait 10 seconds and the ball is still overhanging the hole, and then it falls in after the 10 seconds elapses, the ball has been considered hold out and the player gets a 1-stroke penalty.
The ball, okay, yep, sorry. Yeah, so here it goes. If the ball then falls into the hole before it's played, yep, you're right. Okay. Sorry, getting confused there. Yeah, so if it falls in after the 10 seconds, it's considered hold, but they get a 1-stroke penalty for that. We do have a scenario there, though. What happens if the ball is lifted or moved before the waiting time is ended? And so this happened in the Solheim Cup last year. And I'll share a link here in a second to that situation. But if the ball is lifted or moved before the waiting time has ended, the ball is treated to having come to rest. So the ball must be replaced in the lip of the hole. And the waiting time no longer applies. If the opponent and match play or another player in stroke play deliberately lifts or moves the player's ball overhanging the hole before the waiting time is ended, in match play, the player's ball is treated as hold with the previous stroke and there's no penalty. In stroke play, the player who lifted or moved the ball gets a general penalty, and the ball must be replaced in the lip of the hole. Okay, so what happened in the Solheim Cup last year at Inverness was a player from the European team. I'll share a link in there. Madeline Sagstrom conceded and picked up the ball before they were given 10 seconds for the ball to be at rest, and they ended up ruling that the ball was hold because they didn't wait the 10 seconds, even though there was, you know, a lot of there was debate whether the ball was quote unquote overhanging the hole or not in that case. But there's an article there I put in the chat that kind of talks about the situation that happened where this rule here, 13.3b, was invoked. All right, and then there was another that Dan pointed out too. There's another in the chat about the slide there. It just talks about it was 10 more seconds, not 10 or more, 10 more seconds. So once you get to 10, then it's considered at rest. All right, any questions about Rule 13? All right. because 14 is a pretty important rule, and a big rule, it won't get started in that, but we'll do a quiz here. And then after the quiz, we can, anyone that wants to stick around to talk about what happened with Daniel Berger and Victor Hovland, we can sit around and talk about that. That's a, gosh, I hope our players didn't watch that, because we'll be dealing with that every hole this year if they did. So, all right, let's take a quiz here. Where are these quizzes? All right, we'll do 10 questions. Yeah, I guess we'll do intermediate. All right, in a team competition, the advice giver may be the team captain, a team coach, or a other person, including a team member playing in the competition. But the team member must not act as an advice giver while playing around in the competition.
True.
True.
Yeah.
True.
All right. Yep, true there. Not a good question for us because we don't really have that come up a ton, but all right, when a player's ball lies in a no-play zone in a penalty area, the player must take relief under the penalty area rule, relief rule 17.1 or rule 17.2 with a penalty of 1 stroke. True or false?
That's true.
True.
True. Yep. So when we talk about no play zones, we'll talk about two scenarios where we have no play zones. One where it's in an abnormal course condition, or and then one when it's in a penalty area. There are certain different options when it's in a penalty area versus a abnormal course condition. When a ball must be replaced after it was moved by the player. Another ball may be used when the original ball cannot be recovered with reasonable effort and in a few seconds, so long as the player did not deliberately cause the ball to become unrecoverable.
True.
True. Yep, we can, as long as we didn't throw it in the water out of anger, frustration, we can take another ball and put it in play there. If we can't recover it, we might drop the ball when we're taking relief from the penalty area, and it might bounce and roll into the penalty area. We're not going to be penalized for not being able to get that ball out of the pond. We're going to be able to put a ball back in place there, or in this case, if it was moved by another player. A player's ball marker was moved off the putting green by temporary water while play was suspended. When play resumes, he or she may place a ball or ball marker on the original spot. True or false?
True.
True.
True. Okay. Yep, so we're entitled to that spot that we had before. We may not necessarily be entitled to the same lie on that spot. The natural conditions or natural forces could impact that lie that we might not be entitled to before, but we're entitled to that spot for sure. Which is incorrect regarding the marker in stroke play. The committee may choose the player's marker or tell the players how they choose a marker. If a player had more than one marker, only the last marker is responsible for certifying the scorecard. The player must use the same marker for the entire round unless the committee approves a change either before or after it happens. So which one is incorrect?
B.
B.
B? Yeah. So if we do have more than one marker, we need both markers to certify the scorecard. So typically, what would happen there in the case, we have someone withdraw, we would ask them to sign the scorecard or certify the scorecard before they leave to make sure that all the information that's on there is accurate up to that point. And then a new person would be identified as a marker and keep score for that player throughout. Which actions by a player are not allowed before the stroke when a player's ball lies in a bunker? All right, we talked about this one today. Placing or throwing clubs, equipment, or other objects in the bunker several yards in back of the ball. Smoothing the bunker to care for the course that improves the conditions affecting the stroke. Removing a pine cone several yards in front of the ball that fell from a tree after the player's ball came to rest in the bunker.
B.
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 E.
B as in boy.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And why are we not allowed to do that?
You're improving
conditions that affect
the stroke.
Affects the conditions.
Okay.
What condition?
In the general area, a sprinkler head lies 10 feet from a player's ball on his or her line of play. He or she is allowed relief for interference under the rules.
False.
False. False. Has to be a local rule.
Yep. So in that
Yeah, but-
case, we're not given line of play relief from a sprinkler head. That's just a movable obstruction, not a temporary movable obstruction. And if there is a local rule in place, the local rule is specific to where the sprinkler head is, how far the ball is from the sprinkler head. And so in this case,
And from the green.
Yep, correct. Yep, from the green. Yep, sorry. That's it. So if it's not within, typically it's within 2 club lengths. If it's not within 2 club lengths of the green and 2 club lengths of the ball, then you're not going to get relief. So 10 feet would probably be close to the outside that at that
8 feet.
yeah, it would be outside that 2 club lengths.
Isn't 46 inches the maximum length for a driver?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Might be 48 now.
Yeah, I think it's still 48 for our events.
48 for us.
oh.
46 for the pros.
Right. Yep. All right. A ball that has moved downward has not moved as defined by the rules.
False.
False.
Yep. So when we look at the definition of moved, it talks about the ball needs to stay in the same location, up, down, left, or right. All that's going to be considered balls moved. During the round, a player may access local weather information, including wind, temperature, and humidity, through an application or an internet browser on a multifunctional device.
True.
False.
True.
True.
True. Some true, some false. We'll
False.
see the
Yeah, how
answer.
can he get wind?
So you
get-
can get wind. That measures that specific information, provided that it's just doing it at the general kind of local weather, not that specific wind on that point at the golf course. So if I'm just
It's not
figuring out,
specific to his location on the course.
right. Yep. So if I'm just figuring out what the temperature is in Bloomfield, or what the wind direction is in Bloomfield Hills, I'm fine. But if I'm figuring out, a number 7 at Bloomfield Hills Country Club, where's the wind coming? That's a different story.
Good luck deciding that.
Well, if they just use like weather.com or some website, that's only going to give them that
General information.
local information. It wouldn't give them specific. They need some other fancier device to do that. In stroke play, the committee is responsible for the addition of the players' scores.
It's true.
True.
Yep. So when the committee on the scorecard, we're responsible for the adding, the players responsible for the hole by hole scores, and they need to sign the card that they kept score for, and the one that has their name on it. So, all right, let's see how we did here. All right, we got 10 out of 10. Good work there. All right. Well, we want to, do we want to take another quiz, or we just want to talk about what happened with
Burger.
Berger? And
Kyle, I have a question about Paul Casey's ball from this
Ooh.
weekend.
He got screwed.
He
Yes.
kind of did, I thought, but my question is, and I don't want to get into the whole debate of divots in the fairway, but, and I might not be that familiar with the hard card. I thought they were playing preferred lies. Why wouldn't he get relief under preferred lies?
I don't
Not
think
Sunday.
they were playing.
Preferred rise for
Not
the
on
round
Sunday.
4.
Not on Sunday.
Not on Sunday. Thank you. That was the answer I was looking for.
Monday, it was actually Monday when that happened.
But
Well,
final
Monday, yeah.
round,
Yeah.
final round, right? Okay.
Yeah, they only play preferred lies in the first and second round in the fairway.
Yep, Friday and Saturday.
Got it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
yeah, so the situation that happened there was that his ball was ended up in another
Pitch
player's
mark.
pitch mark, but it wasn't his own pitch mark, and we only get relief for an embedded ball in our own pitch mark.
Right.
So that's why he was not able to get relief, and then he had to advance the ball, and then he hit a crappy wedge shot and made par. And he,
Yep.
so he had his chance to make birdie still, but he definitely did get a bad break, because he probably would have hit the green at 2 and probably would have made birdie there, and then things might have been a little different. But you know, that's golf. It's can be a tough game sometimes, and sometimes you get the breaks and other times you don't. You know, generally speaking, I don't have any negative feelings about Paul Casey, so I can't say he deserved it or not. I mean, Patrick Reed would definitely deserve that. I don't know about Paul Casey. So
You never miss an opportunity, Kyle.
no, never. So,
Patrick Reed almost died from COVID. We need to be nice to him.
yeah.
Did he really have COVID?
Yeah, he had a serious case where he
Yeah.
back in the fall. So I don't know. I'm team K. I'm team.
So what about Berger?
Yeah.
What
So
about Berger in the
yeah.
when-
Yeah, so we can talk about what happened. So basically, it was it the 16th hole?
Yeah,
right?
the par 5.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
it was
16.
16th hole there, and they there was a discrepancy on where he thought his ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area, and where Victor Hovland and the other person he was playing with thought it crossed. Joel Damon, yep.
Yep.
And then Joel Damon eventually walked away like the coward he is. And no, I don't know. I don't have anything to say about Joel, but he eventually got out of the situation, and it was basically came down to Victor and Daniel, figuring out where they last crossed. And so Daniel thought he crossed like 20, 30 yards farther up. Victor thought it was, back here, and they kept going back and forth, and they got the head rules official, Gary Young, I think, involved. And he basically said that, you guys need to come to some conclusion. And if you can't come to some conclusion, then by the rules, we have to go with what the player, in that case, if they don't have any other evidence and they didn't have any video footage that they could access, to determine where the ball did last cross. And so in that case, when you have players like that arguing, ultimately, if there's nothing else that's going to break the tie, what's going to come down to is what the player thinks is right. But what happened was Berger, essentially, they went in the middle of where they thought it was, and they agreed to that spot.
Now, did you see that they posted video after the fact?
Did they?
Yeah,
Oh,
on
yeah.
Tuesday, and said it was actually closer to where Berger said it was than
Mhm.
where Hovland thought it was.
I didn't see that, but
Yeah, so I'd like to see what the conversation is in the coming weeks between the two.
yeah.
well,
Wouldn't
I
picking
didn't
a
hear.
spot- I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Wouldn't picking a spot between where the two players thought it was just be a wrong place by definition?
I would think so.
The video evidence wasn't available at the time. They went back through everything to find that tee shot. And it was posted a day later. Play was already gone through. So it is up to the rules official and the two individuals that were playing to determine where that spot is or where they think that spot should be.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't hear that this rules official made that statement. I thought he just kind of punted the whole deal and said, well, we'll compromise.
Yeah, he just said, you guys work it out.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's kind of
that's
wimpy
what
in
he
my
said.
opinion, but,
Yeah, the
That's-
rules official walked away from the decision.
right.
So
Well, but,
that's certainly not the way it should have been handled, although, again,
yeah,
Well-
but if the rules official doesn't know exactly where the ball went across, why is it his or her responsibility to make that decision?
well, it's
But-
not, but it's his responsibility, as Kyle said, if there's a disagreement and then it goes towards what the player thinks, and he should have enforced that.
Oh, okay,
Exactly.
got you.
Absolutely.
Well,
If video evidence had been available, could they, or let's say the video was available, could it have been used?
Uh-huh.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
in addition.
Sure.
again, In addition, I think the learning lesson for us is that you can also get comments and information from other spectators or from, one of the TV guys said, oh, I knew exactly where it was. Well, where the hell was he?
Yeah.
And he said he was only 10 feet away from the guy. So it didn't seem like this rules official really did his job the way he should have or could have.
I agree.
And
What if-
Referee.
I think-
armchair quarterback here.
Referee, yeah, the referee, excuse me.
I
What-
think Berger just got frustrated arguing back and forth, and Victor Hovland, he was adamant, but I think he was wrong. But as you say, the referee should have got more involved because Berger's got to live with these guys if he did go ahead and go way up there for the oncoming weeks of all the locker room talk. So I agree with Lee that referee should have got into it or involved.
Well, let's
What if
consider.
I'm Berger? What if I'm Berger and I don't ask Hovland where it went across? Where I say, hey, this is where I think it went across, and I don't even ask Hovland. I mean,
But
does
he didn't ask. Hovland spoke up.
Hovland volunteered. Yeah.
Well, but wasn't a shot a 250-yard shot when didn't he hit a 3-wood or something? 250
Yeah, and
yards.
he said he cut it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's quite
Hovland
a
said
substantial
that you
difference. They're
can't cut
talking
the
like
ball
100 yards.
25 yards.
So he wouldn't, no, I wouldn't think any player would have just said, oh, I'm going to drop here. You definitely would just,
okay?
common practice, ask your playing competitors or tell them this is where I'm going to drop.
What
Make
if
sure
I'm
they concur?
what if
Was
I'm like
this-
what if
was
I'm like
this on
Kyle's
Monday?
buddy? Oop.
Oh, so
What-
I was just asking if it was on Monday.
Yes, it was on Monday.
Yes, Monday, yes.
Okay.
What if I don't? What if I'm like Kyle's buddy Patrick Reed, and I don't give a crap what anybody else thinks? And I play it up there. Is that?
Well, no, but the other guys, Hovland and Dahlman were doing what they're supposed to do, which is protect the field. So they
Mhm.
have a responsibility too to say, no,
Okay.
Yeah.
Patrick, or whoever it is, you got to come back here. They need to get into the fray as well as getting the
Okay.
rules official into the
Okay.
fray.
Well, what you don't want the player Berger later on, someone say you hit from the wrong place.
Correct.
I have a question concerning one of the questions on the quiz. The one about the sprinkler head or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so did they just recently change something? I thought that you were only able to take relief if your stance or the swing of the club was going to be impacted by the sprinkler head.
Right.
Well, there's a local rule, Lori. If the local rule is in effect, 2 club
Okay,
lengths from
did
the
it say
green.
that though in the question? I didn't think it said the local rule in
I
the
think, I
question.
think it's the last question, Kyle.
It's the last one. Okay, sorry.
I think
That's
so.
what,
That's
that's why
okay.
the answer was
No.
what it was
No, no.
that it was line of play, not
Okay.
stance, swing, or lie of ball.
Even close.
The sprinkler head lies 10 feet from a player's ball on his or her line of play. So the answer would be false. Okay,
Correct. Yep. Yeah.
okay. I thought y'all said it was true and I thought, oh my gosh, I missed that. Did I miss something? A change in the rules or
Yeah.
something?
No.
So, okay, it is what I thought then.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Back to Kyle, a question. Back to what Lee had suggested earlier, as a rules official, if we're in that situation, should we take the assertive position and say, if either of you cannot agree, then player A makes a determination, move on?
I think the situation that the PGA Tour rules official is in versus the situation that we would be in is a lot different. I mean, those guys are out there with the players all the time, and they're going to let the players work it out between themselves. I mean, if we had, I mean, I don't want to throw any names out, but if we had, you know, two players that played in a lot of our events and know the rules pretty well, you know, chances are we're just going to step back and let them figure it out themselves and jump in if they ask for help. Especially as Robert said, if we didn't see what the shot was and we have nothing to add, you know, we're probably going to stay back. But if it's, you know, two players in a net tournament that, you know, don't really know much about the rules or are new to the GAM, I mean, we're probably going to be more involved in that situation. So I think that's one of these scenarios where, as a rules referee, you're really evaluating the situation based on, you know, the players that you're dealing with, the skill level that they are, their knowledge of the rules, and stepping in appropriately.
Thank you.
But either way, you're gonna get involved in some fashion. You're gonna be present and monitoring the situation, right?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I thought he did a pretty good job in terms of saying, like, you know, it's, you guys figure it out amongst yourselves, and if you can't, you know, let me know, and we'll, you know, ultimately it'll be the player. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, I didn't see the entire thing, but I'm pretty sure that's kind of what he communicated, was that, you know, if you guys can't decide, then it is going to be the player, but, you know, you try to figure it out amongst yourselves.
Hey, Kyle, real quick, going back to question 7 again, I apologize, but does the 10 feet from the player's ball have anything to do with it? Or is it a certain amount of feet, or is it just as simple as the sprinkler either has to be in stance or swing of the club?
So without the local rule, it needs to be in the stance, the lie ball, or the area of intended swing.
Okay, so 10 feet meant nothing other than being part of the question.
Correct.
I think the reason they put 10 feet in there was to make it very clear that it wasn't in the player's stance.
Yeah, got it, Liz. Thanks. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. It's a wide stance.
Tall player.
Yeah, my brother's done that.
Hey, completely off the subject. Next Tuesday at the DAC, John Bodeheimer, Chief Championships Officer, Andy North, and Gil Hance, there's a media conference at the DAC, assuming it's going to be some announcement about a major championship at Oakland Hills.
Awesome.
Oh, wow.
Awesome.
Right.
Next Tuesday, you said?
Yeah, next Tuesday at 11 a.m.
All right. Well, I know Andy North won a USGA championship, so hopefully it's in regards to that one. So that'd be great.
Andy North only won two championships his whole life. Both of them majors.
How many do you have, Mike?
I had 13 in community college.
And he has the ski. He's a ski.
No, don't get into that.
Wow, very, very agile on the slopes.
You know he's no good at euchre.
Oh my goodness. Why do I stick around?
Wow.
Yeah. Gary, you'll soon learn a lot, Gary.
Hey, Mike,
Forward to it, Mike.
Euchre is the easiest game on the planet.
Euchre?
Yeah.
I don't know how to play it because you guys never give me
Challenge.
to play. You just make me watch.
No, if you want to play a real card game, go to.
Cribbage,
Oh, no.
cribbage.
Mahjong.
Oh, my
Well, Kyle?
God. Oh, my wife.
Yes.
Kyle, JW, if anybody still has a question about that sprinkler head, it's model local rule F-5.
Yeah.
And I know we used it in one tournament last year.
Yeah, we used it at the GAM championship at Franklin.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I think maybe another place too, but it was for sure at the GAM championship at Franklin.